Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. This podcast is presented by Pandium, an integration platform for building native integrations.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to our podcast Between Product and Partnerships, where we talk about the challenges and what it takes to build integrations, tech partnerships, and SaaS platforms more generally. And today we are so excited to have Roee Hartuv from Willingness to Pay join our podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, let's start off with the background. I started off in software sales. At some point, I decided that I no longer want to chase quotas and chase my team members to chase quotas. I focused on processes, and that's the area that I wanted to develop further. And there I became an advisor, go-to-market advisor. Did that for a few years and then found what I believe is the number one growth levers any software company has, which is pricing and packaging. And that is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, focusing strictly on that. Yeah, that's about me.
I feel like pricing is a hot topic right now for a lot of reasons. I'm curious, what stage companies do you typically work with?
Companies that have already a motion in place. So the customers, they know what works, they know the value of their products that allows us to actually tailor and refine their pricing and packaging, anywhere between a few tens of millions all the way to a few hundreds. Biggest is $1 billion company ARR wise.
That's awesome. So you've seen all different stages.
Yes.
And yeah, I think pricing is a hot topic right now, especially with AI and some of the sort of volatility around tokens and things like that. So maybe we'll start right there.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed now that their AI is in the mix when it comes to SaaS pricing? And we'll just pretend that SaaS still exists which I think it does for this conversation.
What changes is that all of a sudden the cost to serve our customers is no longer almost zero. If you think about it, the marginal cost to serve the 100 customer or the 10,000 customer in SaaS is basically it's the same, and in most cases, it's almost zero. And that's the game of SaaS, right? We develop one software and sell it, and just everybody gets access to the same platform. However, AI comes with a cost, and that completely changes how companies define their monetization strategy. Because all of a sudden, again, marginal cost is no longer zero. Some say with AI, it could be on an average of 50%. Now the numbers keep on changing and AI is getting cheaper, etc. But it comes with a dramatic cost. Now, unlike SaaS, where not only was it close to zero, all the customers' cost to serve was pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody used the platform. You might have different storage, different compute power, but that was minimal. With AI, you might have super users that are using the product 10, 20, 50 times more than the average customer. So all that completely changes how companies need to think about their pricing and monetization strategy in general.
How do you advise folks think about the unit economics and the margins in a world where both, I feel like the hard costs, as you're referencing, can sort of increase at will, and also the usage price becomes, as you mentioned, an important vector versus just sort of an all-you-can-eat thing, as you mentioned with a lot of SaaS. How should companies think about even starting to think about the unit economics?
So that's the point. They need to start thinking about the unit economics. Because in most cases, when I come in and ask, what's your cost to serve? What's the unit economics of serving a customer or segment, etc.? And usually they don't know. In some cases, they can extract from finance what is the cost of the CSM team.
Mm-hmm.
It is never done on a customer level. It is never done by another metric that is not the total costs of where maybe our AWS costs and CSM costs. So first of all, let's start off with that. The need to understand what is the unit economics. And then we need to be able to measure that on an account and in some cases on a user level, because we'll get to that, but we
Hmm.
eventually need to price on it. But anyway, we need to measure that, and a lot of cases, even in real time. And the best companies out there that are, yes, excuse my language, but are AI native. So it's
Hmm.
not the traditional SaaS companies that added AI capabilities, but there are AI companies that grew as an AI solution. They have it already baked in.
Hmm.
So mostly the challenges for the SaaS companies that are now introducing AI that never thought about unit and economics now need to change how they operate.
And I'm curious, like, it sounds like if you're thinking about it even down to like the user level, there's a lot of input, or there would be a lot of input from product as well. It's not just
Mhm.
like a go to market necessarily, like, oh, we'll just price based on what the market will bear.
Mhm.
Um, who do you think ultimately should own a pricing strategy?
Everybody.
Great
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. Of course, when you say everybody, that means nobody, but somebody needs to own pricing and packaging. It doesn't matter if that somebody sits under finance or sits under um, commercial or sits under product marketing. At the end of the day, we need inputs from all these different groups within the organization because pricing and packaging touches everything. It touches how product built, how they measure the usage that we just talked about.
Hmm.
Commercial, of course, makes sense. Like we need to understand the value and how to sell that value to customers. Finance, we need to be able to understand what that means to forecast what's going to be the revenue moving forward. Um, and marketing, of course, marketing. Traditionally, marketing used to own pricing and packaging. I think it's still valid for companies that have very strong product marketing roles. But yeah, everybody needs to come to the same table and make decisions and own pricing and packaging.
I'm curious how you think companies should approach historically having like maybe annual or multi-year sort of all you can eat kind of contracts in
Mhm.
a world where now consumption is variable and your costs are
Yeah,
also variable, right? Like we don't actually even know how much tokens and stuff are going to cost a year from now. So do
exactly.
you still think that multi-year contracts, fixed fees, like, have a place? How do you I'm sure it depends on the company, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, how you think about advising folks through that.
So the first thing to look is is our cost variable? So does it change? And most likely, when you do AI, it does change. It does change from user, from time of the year, etc. And in that case, most likely, we need to tie our pricing to the cost. It means that we can no longer do fix or per seat or yeah, that type of model that no longer, in a lot of cases, no longer holds. Um, Usage, as you mentioned, is probably the right way to go, but I think a hybrid approach. So creating some sort of fix that will create that um, forecasting capability. So
Mhm.
we know we're going to get this on a monthly basis, and then allowing based on usage some sort of variable cost or pricing that goes up and down based on the usage. So I think that's the way to go. You also mentioned multi-year. I think the duration does not necessarily change if we adopt this model. However, from a pure pricing, this I'm putting my pricing
Yeah, yeah.
hat compared to my sales background. As sales commercial, we always like to do multi-year contracting because it secures the contract that the customer for a longer time. From a pricing point of view, I always advise not to do multi-year because you want to be able to flex, especially nowadays when everybody's learning. As you said, we don't know what is going to be the cost. We don't know the usage patterns. We don't know who the users are.
Mhm.
How will they use our AI capabilities? I would recommend to leave a room to change pricing and maybe even the models every contract period, every year, and not to lock ourselves into a commercial engagement that causes us to lose money for 2 to 3 years because we haven't really anticipated how much usage and how much cost is associated with that account.
Yeah, I guess depending on like what the model companies end up doing, if you're running your own, it's obviously different. But I would imagine until they come up with like a fixed fee, all you can eat kind of pricing
Mhm.
structure, it'd be very hard to have your own product
Yeah.
mimic that or have that unless your margins are huge, right? If you could just absorb it, but that's, as we're mentioning, not really the case when you actually have like material costs
Yeah.
to supporting folks now, which is, it's just wild. I mean, I've been in tech for a long time, and like I remember when compute was expensive, when you had server racks and stuff, but it hasn't been like that in so long. And also
Mhm.
you can switch between cloud providers if you need to, but there really isn't even like a material change in cost typically. Like we've kind of normalized and like zeroed in on this is what things cost, and we're really at a new frontier, I feel like, with
Yeah.
the with AI
Mhm.
tokens or however it's going to end up being metered in
Yeah,
whatever way they end up deciding.
exactly.
So one kind of hot topic that I've seen percolating around on LinkedIn mostly, because that's where I spend too much time, is pricing based on outcomes versus based on value. And my own brain, when I start thinking about this like too deeply, it becomes very meta. And I'm like, all of these things can kind of be traced back to value and
Mhm.
outcome. But I'm
Mhm.
curious how you distinguish between value based pricing and outcome based pricing.
Yeah. We can have one without the other, or we can have both. Let's talk about outcome. Outcome based pricing is the holy grail. Like from a customer, I pay only for outcomes. I don't pay for all the inputs and everything that I need to have in order to get to that outcome. That is fantastic. However, in real life, it's very, very difficult because what is an outcome? You might decide that one outcome is with how your company, but your customers will see the outcomes different. You might have different levels of outcome. So a ticket closed, yeah, that's something that happens quite a lot. If a ticket close, yeah, if I'm creating an AI agent that supports tickets, right? A ticket closed. What happens if the ticket reopens?
Hmm.
What happens if the customer it is closed, but the customer is not satisfied, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of caveats and things to watch out for. Outcome based, let's take OpenAI. OpenAI don't, they cannot do outcome based pricing. So we're all paying 20, or if you're a heavy user, I don't know, it's like $100 or $200 the next tier. That's flat, and you pay per seat. They are a vertical solution. So you and I, or let's take a very extreme example, myself and my mother. I use it as an advisor. I do financial forecasting and a very um, deep Excel that would have required an analyst to sit an entire week to do the analysis that I asked Claude to spit out in just a few minutes. That's my use case. That's my outcome. I get a lot
Hmm.
of value out of it. But my mother, that uses it to check out new recipes and how to do Italian style kitchen cooking, might get a different outcome. The value for me is maybe 1 week's work of an analyst that is very expensive compared to my mother that could have just Googled it and found a solution in 20 seconds. So the value there, the outcome is totally different. So how do you price where the outcome is completely different? So that's outcome. Value based, I think that's also something that we can do. And it's just aligning in how you price and how you package your solutions to what the customer is actually considered what value is. And I think that is, in a lot of cases, doable. And that is what companies need to try to do.
So it sounds like you were talking a little bit about efficiency, right? When you're thinking about not having to hire an analyst or you not being the analyst or whatever. And I know efficiency can be a challenging thing to prove. So I'm curious, and yet there's still a ton of software where their value that they purport is efficiency, or underneath it the value really is efficiency. So I'm curious how you think about pricing based on efficiency, how it compares to value-based pricing, and if there are places where efficiency-based pricing or cost savings are more effective than others. I know again, it's sort of like six of one, half a dozen of the other, but the
Mhm.
positioning I think is important.
Mhm. It's a tough one, especially when that efficiency gain is not clearly understood by the client. So, as salespeople, again, coming from my background, talking about cost saving, efficiency is I usually get it on risk reduction. Also, very hard to quantify.
Hmm.
um, it's hard to do the sell because you need to educate the customer, you need to use or the prospect, and you need to use a lot of examples of other companies or other people in their situation. What was the results for them? From a pricing perspective, this is where I would come in and do a willingness to pay analysis. So I would talk to customers. What is the value that they actually provide? Now, hopefully they know. And you can come in. I had a customer, we did a manufacturing floor management system. Um, and before that, they used Excel, and with their platform, machine uptime was increased by this amount. It was hard for their customers to connect that uptime to the actual software. And again, we had to do a lot of interviews to try to capture what that meant. That's the only way to do that. So to learn to talk to your customers, to really understand what is the value gain, what is the efficiency gain. It might be in time. Eventually, we need to uh, narrow it down to costs or
Hmm.
to dollars, and then try to price based on that. And we need to go into that consultative type of sales mode in order to try to articulate or have the prospect envision what is going to be the efficiency gains.
Yeah, I think it's also challenging when you are like tech for tech, or you're working in environments where companies are adopting a lot of technology, because they often are not going to have consistent data to compare to,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Like
yeah,
the manufacturing, I have a background in like ERP and manufacturing consulting, and I actually feel like that is one of the places where you can have that amount of data. Like if you're walking into a site, a factory floor that's been running for 20 years, you actually can see year over year in 5 year chunks, like the efficiency of building that widget.
mhm,
But
mhm,
in most environments, you're not even able really to compare quarter over quarter
yeah,
sometimes, because
yeah,
the people are changing, the tech is changing, the market, especially now, the market is really volatile. So I think it is challenging to be like, we're going to save you time, and then as an operator, you're looking and like, save me time from what? Like from last month? Like, well, we're already saving time doing all these other things. And I think, AI being sprinkled in is an interesting challenge, because a lot of the benefit is nominally supposed to be efficiency. But then are you making trade offs in other places? And like, how much of that efficiency would you have seen anyway without it's just, there's so much going on
yeah.
with
I
a
think
lot of that.
AI. I think we're in a pivotal moment of AI, and maybe we're all not all, but there are some companies out there that have started to realize that okay, we're past that hype uh, of AI, and what is the real efficiencies? I think it was Uber CEO 2 3 weeks ago said something along. We have used, and I don't know the numbers of AI across Uber,
Hmm.
and we haven't really seen any efficiency gains. So that is an example of an industry, the industry right now that companies are starting to realize we have spent so much on AI, and the ROI, the gains that we were promised or we targeted did not achieve those targets. So, a great example.
Yeah, and I feel like there's just like a natural life cycle that you have to
Yeah.
wait through, right? Like AI is fun in this way because like you get that dopamine hit really fast. It like does a thing immediately, basically.
Yeah.
And like that can feel really powerful. But like the sort of downstream impact of that can take weeks, months, maybe even years to really show up. Like,
Yep.
especially when you're looking at really large companies who do have that data, they're going to want to look at year end and see, like,
Mhm.
where were we from a product perspective, financially, whatever. And that can be during that entire period of time you're spending money, right, to use these products. So I agree. I think we're seeing right now the early adopters that went all in are starting to get that early data,
Mhm.
and it'll be interesting to see where folks land. And also a lot of that is really hard again to measure. Like, how do you measure engineering efficiency? Like, sure, you could pick like lines of code or pull requests or defect rate, but like, what was your defect rate last year at
Yeah.
this time? Did you have the same amount of people? Was it the same products? Was it the exact same humans? Like, it's so, I think it measuring those type of gains is really like a nuanced thing. And I think I
How-
posted on LinkedIn recently about how, like, I feel like there's going to be a bunch of SaaS products that pop up that are like measuring the efficiency per token. And I'm really interested to see like what
Yeah.
rubric they come up with. Like, what is efficiency to
Yeah.
anybody? Like, it when you see it, but like, I don't know what the magic numbers are. I don't know if you have thoughts. It's kind of far afield, but
So again, coming back to the Uber example, the
yeah, yeah,
CFOs and CEOs, when you look at a really high level and you have like enough data, so there they just did okay. So we spent this amount of money with AI in the last, I don't know what was the period that
yeah.
they tracked. How many new products? What's time to market? How did that improve time to market and the amount of features and functionalities that we're launching? They hardly saw any effect. So when you look at it at a really high level, you can make those calls.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Uber is a good example of a business that's been around. I don't know how many years. It feels like it's a part of my, like, everyday life, but it's been around a decent amount of
Yeah.
time, and it's been relatively static, right? Like, they've brought in new features here and there, Uber Eats and, like, all this stuff, like last mile delivery, but, like, the core value of the product has
Right.
stayed pretty
Mhm.
consistent, so I would
Mhm.
totally expect to see that they could be really good at
Yeah.
determining what
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
gains are. I do think that, God bless Uber for coming out and saying it right on record, because I do think we're still in this like cycle of the like good money after bad to a certain extent, where like companies may not want to say that out loud quite yet, even if
Mhm.
they're starting to get those inclinations. But um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see over the next, like, especially for public companies, because
Yeah.
they have to report some of this stuff,
Yeah.
to see what happens. But I could go on for forever about these things. I am curious. This is sort of along the same lines of the AI spend. We've seen over the past few months a handful of these kind of large, big fish companies like HubSpot and ServiceNow. Workday's another one. SAP did this too, I think, where they're starting to provide some metering on agents
Yeah.
for external parties. So to my mind, like, they want to both minimize like the technical overhead on their side and also try to capitalize on folks using agents, and also potentially try to push people into more traditional integration methods because maybe it's less difficult for their own internal systems. But do you have any thoughts on that as like a model? Do you think other companies are going to go in that direction where they're like, hey, if you want to hook up an agent to ServiceNow, like, you got to pay extra for that?
Yeah. Obviously, that's value there, right? That's value there, and they are trying to see what else they can extract from that. And we will see more and more companies um, that are going to do that. Um, so that API gateways and all that,
Hmm.
there's value to capture there, and that's why they're doing it. So of course,
Do you think people are going to pay it? I mean, you'll have to pay it if you want to use it, but do you think, and I ask this with the caveat that charging for API calls is more like my traditional world, and
hmm
that's been a bumpy road. Like, only a
hmm
few companies have really been able to get away with charging their partners, and then the partner, eventually passes it
yeah,
down to the consumer for API access or like per request or something. It's
mhm,
really not, it's tough to get folks to do that. But agents are much like snazzier looking, I think, than
yeah.
just API access. I'm curious if you think folks are going to do it.
So the use case that I see happening, and I don't know if that's your what you mean by that, but I see companies that you don't need to use our interface. You don't need to use our AI capabilities. Bring your own AI, like bring your own agents, the agents that you've built to your organization,
Hmm.
and just hook up to our services, to our data, the data that is yours in our platforms, etc. And yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing as you said, like trying to capture the value from there instead of you have to use our interfaces. So I think it makes sense. Like let's see how the market reacts. But I do feel that it sounds fair from a consumer or from a customer perspective that you would charge for that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's like the value-based kind of pricing. I
Mhm.
just wonder, and I don't have a strong opinion, but like if you're a company that uses Workday and you already have like 100 seats and folks are logging in, like are you as the business then going to want to pay an additional X dollars per agent or per agent request to
Mhm.
get access to that same data? Or are you just going to say and then like maybe cancel seats, or are you just going to say like, hey, Christina, just go log in and pull your own time card.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to have you chat your way there. I don't know. And I also don't know what the cost is. It could be like at this stage so incremental to get folks hooked into
Mhm.
it, which would make sense to me. But it's just like an interesting shift.
But let's take Salesforce, for example. The reason that they're doing this is because they understand that they will have the traditional market is seat based or traditional strategy is seat based. And they understand that AI will replace some of those seats. So they are looking to find ways to capture or to keep the revenue that they're getting from their customers. So that's what they're doing. And I think more will follow.
It's so funny. It's like it's like six of one, half a dozen of the other. We're like slicing and dicing like a lot of similar kinds of like the use cases at the end of the day are similar, right? It's like the person using Salesforce still wants to get to the customer record in Salesforce, but figuring out ways to like creatively both add value and then, as you said, try to like extract
Mhm.
as much as the market will allow, which is what pricing is all about, right? Like any entrepreneur and anybody that runs a business or works in sales knows that like you're trying to hit that sweet spot of like,
Mhm.
what will the market accept for
Yep.
this cost to
Yep.
align with what they're getting out of it? It sounds, I think
Mhm.
when I say it out loud, it feels kind of gross, but that is really like what pricing is, right? Like it's
Exactly.
being competitive.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of, so to bring it back to my neck of the woods, integration related stuff. I think pricing for integrations, and this kind of goes with agents, which are
Yep.
themselves a kind of integration. But if we think about more traditional integrations as like data transfer between two SaaS products,
Yeah.
there's always a conversation about like the unit economics of integrations, depending on how much your customers pay you, and then whether or not it's something that should just be included in your product fee, should be a premier feature in an enterprise tier, or something that you just offer for free given your industry. Like, how do you run into those types of questions when you're talking about pricing strategy, especially for the companies that are the size that you work with? And how would you advise folks to like think about that when they're running a B2B software company, maybe like a mid-size, maybe not billions of dollars in revenue, but a few million bucks and up.
So back to your earlier point, it might sound gross, but yeah, monetize it as much as you can. However, you do have some use cases or verticals that it sounds funny to charge for those connectors. For example, might be a simple example. I'm currently working with a marketing automation platform. So they send emails out or SMS, WhatsApp kind of messages. That type of platform solution needs to connect to your CRM database. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
For them to say, hey, we're charging the platform, and if you need to connect it to Salesforce, you need to pay us, I don't know, $500 a month. It sounds stupid. And they're giving it away for free. So that is how I think about it. So basically, we do want to charge, but everything that is already commoditized, that is basic, then you just give. Usually, you give, assuming that there's no adaptation and no strict maintenance, because everybody connects to Salesforce nowadays. It's not specifically built for a use case, etc. So yeah.
How do you think about that with like PLG or freemium type products?
Ooh, that's that's where it gets tricky, right? So freemium again, generally speaking, and I put that under the context of freemium. Freemium usually does have a certain cost to the company,
Hmm.
and the question is, how much cost are you willing to bear? How much money are you generating for your paying customers, etc.? And
Yeah.
that's like a balance, right? So it's the same. I put it under the same kind of bucket. How much does it cost you to maintain that API to make those connections? And do you have enough revenue from your paying customers, or can you justify the conversion of free to paid in order to subsidize those freemium accounts? Generally speaking, again, at some point you want to create different features that are only available on the paid.
Hmm.
Gut feeling, again, with talking like all the different use cases out there without going into details, I feel that usually connections integration justify a monthly pay. But again, that's the general kind of
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's much easier to bundle integrations into like a feature set versus trying to
Mhm.
charge like for Salesforce, it's $20 a month. For, QuickBooks, it's $30 a month.
Yeah.
Just say like if you're enterprise, you get 10 or you get unlimited or whatever it is. And I also to your point about like the vertical in the industry, there are like some industries where like that Salesforce connection, you just have to have it. If you
Yeah.
don't have it, you're not competitive. And if you are a product that like requires these connections, then you just have to bake it in, and maybe freemium is not the right move for you
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
there is an overhead cost to that, right? Like if you're doing like email if you're doing email deliverability as a service or something, like those email addresses need to go somewhere and come from somewhere, and like your
Yeah.
product is not really useful unless you're getting those addresses
Mhm.
from somewhere, and in that instance it's like you just have to do it and just eat it. But it is interesting how folks think about it. And I've definitely worked with companies that charge thousands of dollars for these connections a month
Yeah.
because they're working with like $1 million contracts, and like they figured out that hey, that like SAP connector, these companies that use SAP are used to paying for this, and like they will pay for it. So it is like
Yeah.
a kind of a delicate dance, I think, and requires
Mhm.
some more nuanced and specialized knowledge about your customer
Yeah.
and the market that you operate in.
Interesting that you're bringing SAP because usually SAP, I would also advise, hey, SAP connectors, this is your world, not mine, but usually it comes with a lot of complexity.
Yes.
It's SAP, right? It usually is tied to mission critical software. So the SLA needs to be 0.9999, right? So in order for that to happen, you need to have people maintaining that. I don't know what goes into maintaining that SLA, but there are real costs associated to that. Usually it's not SAP, it's not plug and play. There needs to be some sort of adaptation to that specific customer and their ERPs and their systems. So specifically, SAP is one of those things that I say usually I would charge premium for that connector.
I agree with you as with SAP for sure. And there are also like some systems that there's a perception that that is the case when it's actually not. And yet there is still like, because those customers that use those systems are typically more expensive,
Yeah.
they're just like used to paying for it. So like there are some small companies, I mean, I've been doing this work forever, where like connecting to their systems is a nightmare. Their APIs are garbage. Like everything about it just sucks. The overhead about it sucks. It's really complicated, and their customers are teeny tiny. So like they just expect it for free. And if you want to be competitive in that segment, you just have to do it. Versus others where they're like really well adopted, well documented, the
Mhm.
teams are great. Like, and like, sure, setting it up might be a pain, but then it's actually like a lot less work. But
Yeah.
the customer base is, for whatever reason, maybe they're like really stuck in that industry, or that specific software is really good for like that one thing. They're just used to paying for it. So it is this like, again,
Yeah.
to go back to like what the market will tell you about it type of thing.
This is what we call customers' willingness to pay. And
Yeah.
that's also the name of our company, Willingness to Pay. Because at the end of the day, we want to price based on how much different customers are willing to pay. Exactly as you said. Like if you're a small company, you don't expect to pay for those integrations, probably I need to give it away for free. But if I'm selling to those enterprises that do expect to pay for those integration, it's common practice, of course I'm going to charge for it.
Yeah, it's funny how like the value isn't always necessarily tied to the effort in terms of like within the sometimes it is like sometimes you're looking at
Mhm.
SAP, like that's annoying, but like sometimes it's the specialization can be the value in the
Mhm.
even if the actual effort is not as high.
Yeah. So again, let me put you into my world.
Yeah.
Different ways to price, right? We can price based on costs and like we can do cost plus and make sure that we have a certain margin that we want. Or we can, again, price on the customer's willingness to pay. So some customers, we will charge them more, although the cost stays the same, but they are willing to pay more. And that's how you build a more intelligent pricing and packaging strategy.
It takes the expertise of someone like you to come in and help figure out what those vectors are. All right. So I think we are up at time. This has been such a great conversation. I could talk about this stuff forever. Where can folks find you?
LinkedIn is great. I'm there. Try to post anything, post from time to time, but yeah, that's where I am.
I will definitely be on the lookout. I'll continue to be on the lookout for your posts. To our audience, thanks so much for joining us. This has been really fun. If you guys listening, watching, reading are interested in learning more about integrations, APIs, pricing, AI, all the things, we've got all kinds of great content, ebooks, other podcast episodes on our website, pandium.com. Thank you again so much for joining us today. This has been really fun, and I'm sure I will see you out there. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. For more content on tech partnerships, integrations, and APIs, check out our articles, ebooks, and other resources in the description or visit Pandium's website.